Hello chess friends and welcome to the of Chess channel and welcome to an amazing tournament that started yesterday. Welcome to the Oslo Esports Cup in 2022. So this tournament is part of the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour that's going on now, of course, through the whole year. And so far, yesterday the tournament started. We had, I think, really some dynamic games, and we're starting now this beautiful tournament with the round 2. The concept of this tournament is the one round robin, so we have 8 players, so we will see 7 rounds of chess, but this is not the classical time format chess. This is the rapid chess. So in order to gain a point, in order to gain a win against your opponent, you have to be better out of the 4 rapid games that are played per day. So this will be again an amazing tournament because probably we'll see many beautiful tactical elements, maybe some queen sacrifices, rook sacrifices, double attacks, decoys, deflections, all those beautiful elements that we love to see, of course, in chess. So let's check out now a beautiful game from the round 2 of this beautiful tournament. It's a game played by the world champion Magnus Carlsen against Quang Liem in the so-called Zuckertort opening. And this game, I think, is not maybe such a beautiful tactical game, but I think you have to know many of the strategical elements that Magnus Carlsen will apply here also by Quang Liem. I think he played a decent defense against the Zuckertort opening. So as I said, it is really something worth to study. Although this is rapid time format chess, but as I said, in my opinion, many beautiful strategical elements were applied in this game. So let's check out now what happened. So Magnus played knight to f3. We have d5 by Quang Liem. We have e3. So we have so far the Zuckertort opening. It's almost like this reverse Nimzo Indian idea when black is playing knight to f6 and then e6. Now white is doing sort of a Nimzo Indian, Queen's Indian, maybe reverse style with then b3, bishop to b2. If you are maybe a Queen's Indian defense player, or maybe if you're Nimzo Indian defense player, you know what I'm trying to say. It's almost like white is playing now the Queen's Indian, but plus a tempo, of course, because white is playing now simply the first move. So that's why we'll probably see the main ideas of the Nimzo or Queen's Indian defense, but simply in a reversed way. So really beautiful opening so far by Magnus Carlsen. So after move knight to f6, we have c4, which is perfectly fine, trying to break now in the center. If black takes now, of course, then the bishop comes out with the tempo. So that's why black is delaying many times the situation, plays normally with the move e6 like Quang Liem did here. So here after move knight to c3 was played, we have bishop to e7 and Magnus played b3. Kingside castling, pretty standard stuff, of course. And then after bishop to b2, now Quang Liem plays, I think, a beautiful move, c5, because I think you have to use your spaces that white is allowing here. White didn't occupy the d4 square immediately, so that's why here c5, d5, e6, this is a perfect setup. Probably a slightly bad piece in this types of structures is the light square bishop on c8, which is a little bit paralyzed by its own pawn structure, but still with b6, bishop to b7, bishop to a6, this bishops can, of course, still come into the game. So after move c5, we have a d4, c takes d4. It's, I think, also very good idea here by Quang Liem to undermine the pressure, because when you have such a dynamic position in the center of the board, many times I think a simplification idea is simply perfectly fine. You just trade off more pawns, go into a simplified line, because now when the dynamics we have here in the center of the board, then you have to calculate also many things, and this is rapid time format chess, so that's why undermining the pressure is perfectly fine. C takes d4, we have knight to d4. What Magnus probably didn't want to gain is after e takes d4 and maybe d takes c4 to have this hanging pawn structure. It is a good pawn structure. It can be, of course, very dangerous because it restricts this potential squares for black's minor pieces, but this hanging pawn structure can be also I think it can be really an object now of black's attack. Many times black will find a way to attack this position, so probably Magnus didn't want to go in this types of ideas, so that's why he took with the knight. And now after d takes c4 that Quang Liem played, he played now bishop to c4, keeping now still a compact pawn structure. You have seen in this previous outcome we had the hanging pawn structure, but now after move bishop to c4 and knight to d4, Magnus Carlsen has still really a solid position and hasn't so far some weaknesses in his position. So after move bishop to c4, we have bishop to d7, Magnus Carlsen, and now Quang Liem plays knight to c6. He wants to again play something like knight to d4 and again go into simplified lines. What you should not do, of course, is take here, then you're inviting your opponent's bishop into the game. And as we said in the beginning, the light square bishop was the worst piece by black, but now if you maybe take out the knight on c6, actually the light square bishop is becoming the best piece on the board. So that's why this is not something that you should do. So after move knight to f3, we have a6, and now beautiful move queen to b1. And that's what I meant about strategies in the Zuckertort opening or in some queen's gambit accepted ideas. I think we can agree that these are also some queen gambit accepted ideas. There were of course delayed ideas, but now in the continuation where we have traded off many pawns, the center is open. Now with the move queen to b1, Magnus is announcing that he's trying now to get the rook on d1. If Magnus would have developed the queen to c2, then of course the queen could be attacked by the knight on b4, and then he would probably again retreat to b1. So this one is a little bit weird to have the queen on this square, but this is now an open center. And what I mean about the open center now, of course, when you leave the queen on d1, then the queen will probably be attacked by the rook activity on the d file, maybe on the c file. So that's why Magnus is trying now to get his rook on the d file where he could attack the queen on d8. So we have now b5 attacking the bishop, bishop to e2. Look at this, very important move for Magnus not also to here go to e2, because then Quang Liem would kick away the bishop, and then you have to go to d3 where it can be of course also attacked. So that's why queen to b1, really nice idea. So we have h6, we have rook to d1, and now queen to b6 here by Quang Liem. So we have now a beautiful move, I think, by Magnus, a4. And this move I like, although probably it's not one of the suggested moves by top engines, but that's not the point, because this move is simply releasing the pressure a little bit here on the queen side, because it's very important now to release the pressure, because black is of course an advantage here on the queen side. Black is of course an expansion on the queen side, so that's why a4 is pretty a decent idea. Because what you could do here from black's perspective is to take b takes a4, but now if you take with the pawn b takes a4, then I think black could have a good game with rook to b8. So that's why white would be forced to play with the knight to a4 attacking the queen. And the problem I think in this scenario is that queen to b3 is not a possibility, because you get bishop to f6, you see bishop to f6, and now you see the queen is saying, of course, pardon me, first black will take, then rook to b1, but even if you take bishop to f6, then you see bishop on d7 is hanging, so white is winning the game for sure. So that's why you have to be careful. So that's why b4 was played by Quang Liem, here knight to e4, and now knight to d5. The problem is now you cannot take also the knight, because then you're inviting again the queen into the game. And there is now a problem. For instance, if you try to protect your bishop on d7, then we'll play simply rook to c1. We will now occupy the open center with our rook activity. And now after rook from a to c8, we can play queen to g4. We can also play g4 here. Also some ideas of bishop to d3 are working. So this is already very dangerous. I think white is dominating all over the board. The engine, for instance, gives here +2 evaluation, especially with this idea, bishop to d3, trying this annoying check on on h7, then g6 has to be played or something, then we can play also h4, h5. So white is controlling simply the center of the board. So that's why after move knight to e4, you cannot take out the knight, you cannot invite your opponent's queen into the game. So that's why Quang Liem played knight to d5, bishop to c4, and now a good choice, rook to d8, activating a piece, although you're sacrificing here a pawn. Here bishop to d5, we have e takes d5, and now rook to d5. But okay, Quang Liem lost the pawn, but he has now a beautiful counter attack with bishop to e6, and he's attacking now the weak pawn on b3. This was so far really good tactic. So that's why Magnus has to take rook takes d8. We have a rook takes d8, and now knight to d2. Magnus has now to defend the position and wants now somehow to include, of course, the queen into the game. This bishop is perfectly fine. It's now the best minor piece of white. So here queen to c5, we have queen to d1, we have queen to d5. So you see Quang Liem is continuing the pressure, also an attack against the pawn on b3, but also this beautiful attack on the open file on the d file. So we have rook to c1, and now comes one of the critical moments of the game. So here Quang Liem played a mistake. Bishop to g4 was not the best move, because Magnus can escape from this attack by playing queen to c2, and that's exactly what Magnus Carlsen did. Here Quang Liem should have simply played a decent idea, knight to a5, but it's of course rapid time format chess, and here Quang Liem was already low on clock. We can understand that sometimes this kind of thing can happen, but knight to f5 I think is perfectly fine because we're attacking the b3 pawn, and now white is forced to play knight to d4. But this is really a passive setup, and now after bishop to f6, you see black is continuing the pressure. Probably you have to even create some breathing spaces, and now we can trade it off, bishop to d4, and now we can finally take. Now we have a 2 versus 1 pawn majority, and maybe here even black is slightly better. So I think so far Quang Liem played an outstanding game, but bishop to g4 was an inaccuracy because now Magnus can escape. You can maybe take, but here after knight to f3 we have knight to a5. Okay, this is perfectly fine to attack the pawn on b3, but this can be defended with knight to d4. So we have bishop to f6, so Quang Liem is trying to take out the knight, which is of course controlling the b3, and then afterwards to take out the pawn. So that's why rook to b1, because if you try now bishop to d4, that was exactly what was played in the game. Then bishop to d4, and you see now with the move rook to b1 we have protected the weakness on b3. So okay, knight to c6 was played by Quang Liem, attacking further the bishop. We have a rook to d1, we have knight to a5, trying again a perpetual. We have rook to d3, and this was now a way to protect the pawn and not to do the same moves, of course, not to force a draw. This was a good choice by Magnus Carlsen. He's saying, I'm up a pawn, I want to simplify the game, maybe even trade off more pieces and then go into a favorable endgame. So here after move queen to f5 was played, we have h3, we have rook to c8 attacking the queen. We have to play it back here from white's perspective. Rook queen to d1 was played, and now rook to c1, kicking away the queen. The queen has to take, and now here Quang Liem also takes out the queen. Here of course now again the pawn on b3 is hanging, but Magnus plays now the correct move, plays first the check. We have king to h7, and now queen to f8, trying a checkmate here on g7. So that's why f6 was played. We have queen to b4, and now knight to b3. So of course Quang Liem took another pawn, but this was, I think, a beautiful maneuver by Magnus Carlsen. Okay, he lost the pawn, but he also grabbed the pawn on b4. So we have now bishop to c3, and after move knight to c1 now comes one of the critical moments of the game. So here Magnus plays a huge blunder. He plays now the move king to h2, because this is not a good move, because knight to a2 is now a serious threat. Normal idea is here to play bishop to e1, then you're not vulnerable to some forks. I'm not sure what happened. Magnus Carlsen had, I think, here around 5 minutes on the clock, so he could have even calculated this. As I said, the bishop to e1 would lead probably into this kind of continuation h5, simply fixing the pawn structure here, something like queen to d2, and maybe, as I said, simply trade off more pieces and go into a favorable endgame where you're simply up a pawn. But Magnus played king to h2, allowed this fork. We have queen to e4, and this was of course a huge blunder, because here Quang Liem can take, and this was game over. So of course the best move is here to play queen to d4. Then after a couple of trades we can play maybe here some perpetuals, here queen to e4. That would be the only queen to e6. That would be the only way now to prolong the game, by creating some checks, and here for instance you can try to trade it off, but now the knight is hanging. So that's why in this position probably the game would lead into a draw. But Magnus played, as I said, this move, probably it was a mouse slip, queen to e4, and it was game over. So the only way, as I said, to prolong the game was to move queen to d4. So I'm not sure what to say. Huge blunder, but of course Magnus Carlsen has still his chances. He'll probably get back, and he will recover from this. It's not such a huge problem. I think he played a decent game, but we have to say it also, Quang Liem played an outstanding game, especially with the defense, where he sacrificed the pawn in order to activate some pieces. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed the game. Interesting ideas of the Zuckertort opening for sure. If you want to see more commented chess games here on my YouTube chess channel, here's the link of our whole series where we have covered some other tournaments too. And if you want to see maybe the best games that are played by engines, check out my bad chess games played by the top engines, Alpha Zero, Lila Zero, Stockfish, and many more. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.